So hello, welcome everyone. In the series of lectures on categories, classification and characteristics of services, now we'll talk about characteristics of services. So this is the fourth lecture. We have already covered lecture 1, lecture 2.1, lecture 2.2 and now this is lecture number 3. So total 4 lectures comprising of topics like categories, classification and characteristics of services. So we have covered one lecture for the categories of the services, two lecture for the classifications of the services, and now this is lecture number third. In all, it is lecture number 4. So we'll talk about the characteristics of the services. Now, when we talk about the characteristics of services, some authors have mentioned about 5 characteristics, some have mentioned about 4, and some have mentioned about 6 also. But all of these are related to each other, so we can use either 4, 5, or 6 also. But according to me, 6 characteristics are the important characteristics. So we'll discuss about all these 6 characteristics. Okay, so prior to this, I will quickly summarize. We have covered about the categories of the services. We talked about the classification of services in detail. Now we are talking about the characteristics of the services. Now, when we talk about the characteristics, so these 6 characteristics are intangibility, inseparability, heterogeneity, variability, perishability, and lack of ownership. So intangibility, which cannot be touched or seen. We have already talked about this tangibility and intangibility factor in the previous videos also. Second one is inseparability, which can't be separate, produce and consume simultaneously. So this is the important characteristic of the service. It's not like other products or the physical product that we can produce, we can manufacture and keep for a longer period of time and utilize over a period of time. The utility of a product is utilized or diminishes over a period of time, which is not in the case of services. Now, third characteristic is heterogeneity. Heterogeneity varies with each service encounter. Service encounter, the time when the customer actually encounters the services or actually consumer or the customer receives the services from the service provider. So every time if we go for similar type of services, there would be a heterogeneity. Fourth one is variability. Variability means inconsistent quality. Now fifth is perishability. Services cannot be stored or saved. Number 6 is the lack of ownership. So no transfer of the ownership is possible in case of services. Now we'll talk about this in a detail with the examples. As we talked earlier about different types of services in the previous slide, we can mention these characteristics in terms of 5 I also. 5 I's like intangible for I, second I inconsistent, third I inseparable or variability, and fourth I is the involvement, and fifth I is the inventory, which is related to perishability. So we can explain these characteristics in terms of 5 I's also. Now we'll talk about this with the example of hair cutting salon. Now hair cutting salon. So let's talk about intangible. Now for example, a haircut service and services in general is made up of intangible action. We can't physically hold those actions or the service. Whenever we go to any beauty salon, or let us say we are going to any parlor for haircut, we are going there to get some services only. We are not going there to buy any product. We are going there to get some services, hair cutting services. Now intangible, this is intangible in nature. We can't see this. We can have a haircut, we can see, yes, our look will change, but at the same time the type of services we are getting, that can't be touched, that can't be seen, that can't be physically presented. We can realize that only. Second is inconsistent. A haircut on any particular weekday, or let us say on Monday morning, by Mr. X or maybe by me, is likely to be different to the one on the other weekend, other weekday, or any other month by Mr. Y or any other person. if a same person is rendering or delivering the haircutting services, offering these services, the type or the nature, they may be following, the person may be following same standard, same parameter, but the nature of delivery will vary from person to person, time to time. So this is inconsistent. Third is inseparable or variability. Both you who is getting the haircut, for example, we talked about Mr. X and Mr. Y. Both in this case, both are getting haircut. The person cutting the hair have to be at the same place and same time for the haircut services to be performed. For example, the person who is offering these services, customer would be available there for getting the haircut, but the person who is delivering these services, who is offering the haircut, or the barber, the person has to be present there, has to be available there. So services are simultaneously produced and consumed. The person who is delivering services has to be there and the receiver has to be there. So that is the reason we call this as inseparable. Okay. Fourth eye is the involvement. You combine both wishes for the haircut with the haircutter's experience and skills to get the haircut you want. And this can be altered as it goes further. Discussion about the involvement of the customer. So customer involvement is also important while rendering the services. A service provider may be offering the services, but again there has to be some receiver who is going to receive the services, who is going to get the services. Now fifth eye or perishability is we can't store the services. We can't store haircut for future use. Okay, so it has to be used in that get the it has to be utilized at that particular time only. So the services are offered at any particular place or particular time only. We can't store them. We need to utilize, we need to get the services in the present moment only. So these are the different eyes or five eyes of the service characteristics. So on the screen you can see these five parameters are again discussed to in a different way. Ultimately, these are explained in a similar way, but for the convenience of the reader, I had added some more content. So characteristics and their distinguishing features are mentioned. This we had already covered in the previous slide. So while getting into the details of the characteristics of the services in service marketing, let us compare goods and services. So on the screen you can see the parameters of the goods and services are mentioned and the resulting implications are also mentioned. So when we talk about the goods or the product, the characteristics are like they are tangible in nature, standardized, production is separate from the consumption and non-perishable. Mostly other than FMCG product or the fast moving consumer item, daily consumable items, groceries, generally products are non-perishable. Their shelf life is much higher, much longer. When we compare these parameters with the parameters of services, we can see services are intangible and heterogeneous, simultaneous production and consumption, and perishable. So what are the resulting implications? So resulting implications are like services cannot be inventorized, services cannot be easily patented, services cannot be readily displayed or communicated. Pricing of the services is difficult. Service delivery and customer satisfaction depends on the employee and customer action. Service quality depends on many uncontrollable factors. There is no sure knowledge that the services delivered matches what was planned and promoted. Customer participate in and affect the transaction. Customer affect each other. Employee affect the service outcome. Decentralization may be essential. Mass production is difficult. It is difficult to synchronize supply and demand with services. Services cannot be returned or resold. Services for any given time period cannot be sold or delivered at the later date. So these are the characteristics or these are the so-called resulting implications that clearly differentiate services from the goods or product. Now, characteristics of the services. So now again, these are represented in a different manner. Although we have covered all these characteristics, intangibility, the use of tangible or tangibility product. No stock maintenance means we can't stock there. Low price sensitivity, the price variability is very less. Value creation process, yes, services involves a value creation process. On the right side of the screen again you can see these are the similar characteristics presented in a different form for the convenience of the reader, for the better understanding of the reader, like lack of ownership, intangibility, inseparability, variability, perishability, and users participation. So these are those same characteristics that we discussed earlier but presented in a different manner for the convenience of the reader, for the better understanding of the reader or the person who is viewing this. So we'll talk about this in more detail. So some authors have mentioned about the four characteristics, some have mentioned five, and some have mentioned six. Intangibility, as I mentioned, services can't be touched, can't be displayed, and assessed by the buyer. Okay, so these characteristics we had already covered. We'll proceed further. So to have a quick recap on the tangibility or so-called intangibility, there are some implications. Implications of intangibility. Services cannot be inventorized. Services cannot be easily patented. Services cannot be readily displayed or communicated. And the pricing of services is also difficult. Now we'll proceed with next characteristics. Inseparability. Now when we talk about the inseparability, services are like produce and consume simultaneously. Okay, we can't store them. Consumers have to be present there during the service production. Inseparability of the production and consumption, both are done simultaneously. On the screen you can see an example of the barber or the salon offering haircut to a customer. So the service provider has to be there, the services are delivered at the same time, and the receiver has to be there. Implications of simultaneous production and consumption. Inseparability. Customers' participation in and affect the transaction. Affects each other. Customers affect each other. Employees affect the service outcome. Decentralization may be essential. Mass production is difficult. So these are the some implications or the characteristics of the simultaneous production and consumptions. Perishability. You can see there is a image. There is some images are also mentioned on the screen to explain the concept of perishability. Services capacity is limited, cannot be inventorized. Short-lived value of services. So there are some implications also. It is difficult to synchronize supply and demand with the services. Services cannot be returned or resold. Services are produced and consumed simultaneously, and the nature is perishable. Example of aviation or airline is mentioned here. Whenever some passenger or a customer is buying air tickets, the ticket or the services are brought for a particular time only. We get the travel facility or the services for a specific time, specific day, specific flight only. We can't utilize that services again and again. Every time we want to avail, we have to purchase, we have to buy new services. Or the journey, we can't spread that journey. If we are buying a ticket to travel for a particular duration, particular distance, then we have to utilize at that time only. Variability and heterogeneity. Variability and heterogeneity is very difficult to achieve uniform output because we are getting services. We are not getting benefits or getting utility of the product. Products have standard features, standard parameters, standard quality, but services are always delivered by through some machine, through mechanism, or by human being. So it is very difficult to achieve uniform output always. Achieving standardization is difficult. So setting quality control is also difficult. Okay, there are some example. For example, hospitality industry. You can see examples of some hotels. Even if we talk about the airline also, you will see that there is a variability every time we travel. The parameters may be same, like the terms and condition may be same, or the quality standards offered by the service provider may be same, but there is a chances of variability and heterogeneity every time we are getting services. The reason is simple, because the services are delivered through human being, services are delivered through equipment or through machine. So that is the reason. Implications of heterogeneity. Service delivery and customer satisfaction depends upon the employee and customer action, as we discussed earlier. So employee action are important. Machine or the equipment is also at the same time important. But the customer action, customer mood, customer is receptive or not, that is also equally important. So service quality depends upon so many uncontrollable factors. Few factors we have already discussed. There is no sure knowledge that the service delivered matches what was planned and promoted. So the service provider may be having a certain idea, certain mindset, but in and at the same time the consumer is also having some mindset, some expectation, preconceived idea also sometime. So that may not match always. That is the reason that the of heterogeneity. We'll talk about two more characteristics. For example, relationship building and customer involvement. So these are the additional characteristics of the services. Relationship building is like building long term relationship with the customer or building strong relationship with the customer. So loyalty and repeat business are essential for service provider, creating emotional connection and trust with the customer. So this is required when we offer services to the customer, to the consumer. Relationship building matters a lot, because we are not offering any physical object, physical product. We are offering services through human touch. We are offering services through some equipment, some machines. So that is the reason we need to build up a relation with the customer, so that we can convince the customer, we can retain the customer for a longer period. You can see an example of the online portals also, or e-commerce websites also. So they always try to engage the customer for a longer period. So that is done through the relationship building, or so-called relationship marketing. Now, another characteristics is customer involvement. Yes, the involvement of the customer is very, very important. As we talked earlier, that while delivering the services, the service provider has to carefully plan, carefully deliver the services. Sometimes services are delivered through the human being only, and sometimes services are delivered through some equipment or some machines. But whatever we are doing as a marketer, we need we need to ensure that customer is completely involved. It depends upon the customer mindset also, receptive mood of the customer also. Then only we are able to improve our quality, improve our services. So customer plays a more active role in the service delivery process, and we must consider the ways to engage and empower customers in co-creating value, which may be beneficial for us as well as for our customer or the consumer. Now there is a table, there is a chart which talks about the implications and marketing related topics. We talk on the left side of the screen. You can see these are some managerial implications of common features of services. So first is, most service products cannot be inventorized. Okay, that is, output is perishable. Second is, intangible elements dominate value creation. Like service is physically intangible. Third is, services are difficult to visualize and understand. So mentally intangible. Okay. Fourth point is, customer may be involved in the co-production of the services. Inseparability. We talked about this in detail. People processing is involved in developing the services, in delivering the services. Fifth is, people may be part of the service experience. Okay. Then services are heterogeneous in nature, means input and output vary widely every time we deliver the services. Time factor is very important. What time, what place the services are offered is also equally important. And then we have distribution via non-physical channels. In product marketing, we may require a traditional distribution retail outlet. We may require dealer distributor also, which is not the case of services. So these are the different parameters, and on the screen you can see implications as well as marketing related topics also. We have already covered and we have summarized this earlier also. The detailed content is mentioned on your screen. You can refer this, and the citation from Lovelock is also mentioned here. So we talked about these important parameters, also called the characteristics of the service marketing.